Guts and Grit Podcast. A podcast where we discuss overcoming the odds, resiliency, and never giving up. Join us each week as hosts John Melson, Joy Vatrabek, and Mark Renahan discuss coming back from failure and never quitting. Guts and Grit, it's go time.
Welcome back to another episode of Guts and Grit. This is episode 9, I believe. We're almost to 10. Of course, I am with my two co-hosts, as always. Sergeant Melson coming to us from Fort Benning. I think still at Fort Benning, Johnny?
I'm still here.
Yes, and of course, the lovely Joy. She wasn't with us last week. She had a little bit of the Rona.
Yes.
She's back.
Glad
and
to be back.
Feeling good.
It's been going around.
Yes, it has. And of course, that is our engineer, Noah. So today we have a kind of I call it a brief reunion show, but we have a special guest with us today. His name is Brian Wood. Brian was a member of the service with John. He's been to Afghanistan several times, and he was part of an incredible story called Op Nevada. We're going to get into a little bit later today. But I wanted to welcome with the show today, Brian Wood. Brian, how are you?
Welcome, Brian.
Hey, I'm doing good.
Well, Brian, we like to jump right into the show. We don't like to be shy. So, I know you were originally from Illinois, and I know that you joined up and you were with the Mass National Guard. But maybe you could just go into a little bit of your background and tell us what got you to join the service.
I had always wanted to do something with my life. I didn't know if I wanted to be in law enforcement or military. And then September 11th happened. And I remember being in high school at September 11th and watching the towers fall in school. And that was just extremely, traumatic for everybody. Mm-hmm. And I think that solidified my dedication to what I wanted to do, because I knew what was going to happen with the country. I was graduating the next year. And it was just something that I put my stake in the ground, and I said, this is what I'm going to do, because I know that we're going to go over there and, take care of business. And I wanted to be part of that. I wanted to do something better than just, something for myself. I wanted to be part of something bigger.
Well, thank you, Brian.
Now, Brian, it's funny that, not funny, I shouldn't say that, excuse me, but it's interesting that you bring up September 11th. We've had a couple of guests on our show. One was a survivor who was on one of the floors on September 11th, and it's amazing how much that event affected everyone in our nation, and it got a lot of guys like yourself interested in serving. So I guess my next question is, a lot of people, and it's been in the news lately too, Afghanistan. I know just yesterday there was an Al-Qaeda leader killed there, but you have been to Afghanistan, and I was just curious, kind of what your take was on that country and what your time in country there was like.
It was surreal. You didn't really know what you're going to get into. Obviously, a lot of our training, our pre-mobilization training and stuff like that, would have people who were previously deployed. You even have Afghan citizens coming over, local nationals, to help you kind of establish of what it's going to be like. But when you get there, it's entirely different. You land, it's hot, it sucks, it's dirty. No matter where you go, it's always just a hurry up and wait. But what kind of amazed me was the multiple tours that we've done is no matter where we were in the country, it just seemed like everything was the same. It seemed like the way that everyone's attitude towards us was the same. Like we did so much to help out. We did so much to care for as much as we could to help them better themselves, so that we didn't have to be there, so that they can go ahead and they could be, their own country. They could do their own thing. And it just seemed like we were taken advantage of, it's like that they're just trying to get what they can try and get out of us when they could. And there's a lot of blue on green, green on green, stuff like that, which is where, you would have local nationals, police, or army would attack us, service members and things like that. So there was always this level of maybe mistrust. It was hard. It was hard to sit there, and especially with me and John, it was my first deployment. We're part of an ETT, an embedded tactical training team. So we lived with and we trained the Afghan National Army. So to sit there and to train them and have relationships with them, but at the same time, something in the back of your head is, can I trust these people all the way? Is really hard. It's really hard to let your guard down like that, but also be in combat with them and then train them and actually care for them, because essentially, we're putting our life on the line with you guys, because we're here fighting with you guys, same enemy.
Yeah, so, Johnny, let me ask you, did you have any of those same issues? I mean, it must have been super hard. Like, hey, I'm here, I'm training you guys, I'm trying to help you guys any way I can. But then again, last week one of you tried to kill us. Like, is that something that never leaves the back of you guys' mind when you're over there? I think John is frozen.
John, you copy us?
No, John is frozen, but that's all right. We'll get him back in a minute. But that obviously, Brian, is something that had to go through your head nonstop.
Yeah.
Now, when you first got there to meet John, were you a member of the Mass National Guard with John?
No, we had gotten there, and we hooked up with the 1st Infantry Division. And then, so I was just promoted to team leader in an entirely different unit. John was already in the South, and he was part of this embedded tactical training team. When I arrived in country, I was just promoted to a team leader. My primary MOS was infantry. My secondary MOS was mortarmen, so indirect fire. As soon as I landed in country, I had a second lieutenant come up, ask for me personally, and he said, hey, you need to report to Colonel Bessler's office, which he was the RSIC commander. So he commanded the entire western region of Afghanistan. Had no clue who he was or what he wanted with me. He pulled me to the office and said, hey, I heard you're the best man qualified to go down south and be part of this ETT team. I had no clue what they were. And in 3 hours, I was on a Humvee and I was separated from all my guys. And about 9.5 hours later, I linked up with this team and John was there. Before I mobilized, I had a lot of good friends who were veterans and things like that. And they said, you need to find the guy with the most combat experience, the guy who knows exactly what he's talking about. And they said, you need to get in his back pocket and learn everything that you can possibly learn. And that was John. That was John to a T.
John,
So,
are you back with us, John?
So, Brian, what's an EGT team?
Embedded tactical trainer.
Okay.
So ETT. So it was a specialized team that was small. And like I said, we lived with and we trained the Afghan National Army. So it was like, we were totally in control with them. We would go out on missions with them. We would train them to get them up to speed on anything. Small unit tactics, large, unit tactics, dismounted patrols, mounted patrols, heavy weapons. And then my specialty at the time was indirect fire. So that was mortars and things like that.
Wow.
So to get them mobilized, with mortar training and things. So when I got there, they had me, for the heavy weapons platoon. So, or the heavy weapons company. And, I'm looking at anywhere between, 60 to 85 soldiers with, NCOs and officers and stuff like that to get them up to speed to be able to support themselves when they're in combat.
Jeez, that's quite the job.
It is. I know.
I'm the voice of a cartoon character, so similar in the things there. But Johnny, you back with us?
Yeah, I think.
There-
Am I on now?
You're breaking up a
your
little
internet's
bit.
a little weak, but you're there, buddy. Oh, you there now, Johnny?
Okay, so
Okay.
you got me?
Yeah, go ahead.
There you go.
Okay, so just to answer your previous question, when we were embedded with the weapons company, that was my second tour being embedded with the Afghan Army. And so knowing it was a heavy weapons company, we're going to need an 11 Charlie, which is a mortarman, which is Brian's specialty. And so we had reached out, Captain Garvin, Mess Sergeant Salmons. We had reached back to the RSIC West Command up in Herat, and we had asked, hey, do you have any 11 Charlies, which is mortarman, as part of the security force element up there in Herat? Because we could really use one down here to help train mortars. We know mortars, but that's not our specialty. And lo and behold, they gave us Brian. And what a huge addition Brian's skill set was for our success with the mission that we had in Herat, well, down in Farah. And with that, Brian established some of the best mortar training that the Afghan National Army had received throughout their time as being soldiers in the Afghan Army. And Brian continually received praise for that. And it also showed on the battlefield once we were able to put those A&A soldiers in action fighting against the Taliban, as well as we had a Marine Special Operations Detachment with us. And Brian was able to integrate the mortar training into the mission and capabilities of the MARSOC team as well. So it played on very, very dangerous ground out there in Western Afghanistan. In Farah, that's when the big push with the Marines down in Helmand And it ended up pushing a lot of the Taliban activity up into our AO. And it was great to have Brian as part of the team, become friends. All of us. It was a small team. I think total we had, 8, 9 of us?
Yeah, 8, 9 are all first name basis.
Yep. And Matt Sandwich, he was the crusty old guy. He still sleeps on his thumbtacks, I'm sure, right? But he was active duty. And we got into an awful lot of enemy interaction in Farah.
We just lost Johnny. Oh.
Is that Farah you're saying? Farah?
Herat, Herat.
Oh, Herat.
Johnny, I lost you for a second. You there now?
Farah.
Okay.
Am I back?
You're back. Yeah, sorry.
All right, sorry. And so getting to link up with Brian. Brian was big on fitness as well. Two of us always button heads, getting in the gym, working out, and one of our previous guests who used to try and come in the gym, and Brian knows him because he was a part of our team, was Rashid. Now he's a lieutenant in the United States Army. We all know him as Arm, right?
Yep.
So that's how we knew Arm when he was just a young 18-year-old kid.
Coming in to lift with you two?
What's that?
He was coming in to work out with you two? Yeah, that must have been great. Great. God love you, Rashid. Mother of God. Not only did you go through everything you went through, but you had to go lift with these two animals. All right. Well, that's interesting.
So it was a great tour, that Farah tour. Man, the bonds we had. Brian had some really good videos of some of the silliness. We say silliness, but to the general population, it was probably the absolute madness when we were in the middle of the thick of things fighting with the Taliban, and you hear us laughing it off. And so as we're, we like to say laying down an ass whooping, right? We get through that deployment, and obviously we had a bond, and we stayed in touch. And like you already mentioned, he was with the Illinois National Guard. I was a Massachusetts Guardsman I volunteered for that deployment. And then later on, a couple of years later, I got the opportunity to become a platoon sergeant, get my own platoon, and deploy to Afghanistan. And I reached out to Brian, knowing, hey man, I'm going to need somebody with skill set, with mortars, combat experience like you. And Brian already underwent all the madness, so he understood the methods of the madness and why it's so important for us to train, get in shape, do what we got to do, because he'd been through the thick of it with me. And man, I love this guy. I mean, he didn't hesitate at all. As soon as I asked him, he was like, hey man, would you want to come over and go on this deployment with me? And actually, I think he was itching too. I think he wanted to get back in the fight. Not so much just me asking him to go. I think he was looking for the opportunity as well. And he transferred to Massachusetts and ended up deploying with us on the second tour. And man, did he do a great job. The first deployment I was with him, he did even a better job the second time, leading soldiers to the big win and getting them through some of the hairiest shit that they've ever went through.
What year was this, John?
Me and Brian worked together from 2008, 2009 in Western Afghanistan. And then we linked up in late 2010. And that's when he moved out. He was staying at my house in Dedham, and then trained up the guys. And then we went and deployed early, was it January, February, I think it was. We went to Camp Atterbury, Brian.
Yeah, in the frat house. Your house, the frat house.
Yeah.
You had him living in Massachusetts, and he made it to Afghanistan. That's a miracle in itself right there. Well, Johnny. Go ahead.
With the Dunkin' Donuts every block.
Yeah.
Well, my brother lives in Dedham, Brian, and that's like Dedham is heavy Dunkin' Donuts territory. Heavy Dunkin' Donuts territory.
Love some Dunkin' Donuts.
Well, John, you brought up an interesting point, in which kind of with today's show, I hate to steer towards this, but I know you two went together over there, and you were part of for lack of a better term, a very famous type of a battle called Op Nevada. I know that you both had different roles in that fight, whereas Brian was on top at an outpost, surrounded and facing heavy Taliban. And you were, I don't want to get this wrong, but you were back at a forward base, I'm assuming, and then came to the fight afterwards. I wanted to maybe touch base a little bit about that, and just get kind of the point of, how Brian was feeling being at that outpost. You're with your guys, you're surrounded, and how you were feeling being back where, knowing that you guys were in a tough situation, and then boom, you went from there. So I don't know which one of you want to start, but maybe we could just kind of get into it.
Hey, well, I'll leave it up to Brian. I mean, this was Brian's thing. I was there just riding his shirt tails, trying to give him what he needed to be successful. But Brian took those guys in for a big win.
Sure. So I knew the responsibility of what it was, as a squad leader to, want to make sure that you get everybody home safe. That's the biggest deal. So when we arrived in country and we're at our forward operating base, this observation post is line of sight. You could literally see it from where our forward observation post was. It wasn't but a mile as the crow flies right across the river. But in order for you to get there, the only way to get there was by helo. So you could not walk up there, you couldn't hike up there, and anything else like that. The terrain was really rough. So we would go up there a week at a time, and it was a squad leader-based mission. So the squad leader would be up there and just kind of run the show. Well, when we established ourselves up there, we really were making it known that there's a new group in town, and we're trying to make sure that we're eliminating any and all access for Taliban activity in our sector, anything that we could see. So anything that we would spot, we would report that up. We would have, warning fire, things like that. We would call for fire every time we needed to, so we could really limit their movement. We did not want them to hit, friendly towns. We did not want them to hit forward operating bases or roads or any of that stuff. As soon as that happened, the Taliban activity around the area really just kind of ramped up because they were a little pissed, to say the least. What had happened was we had only been up there for a handful of days. It was our first rotation up there. We really weren't knowing what to expect. And in my squad, I've only had 2 guys who deployed. So the rest of my 8 guys up there are all new. So there's only really 3 of us that had combat experience. We had reports with our Afghan National Army guys who were up there. We had reports that Taliban were trying to breach our wire early one morning. So we had a small dismounted patrol. We went out there, and there was 3 men who were trying to breach the wire. We were able to go ahead and get 1. The other 2 had ran off, and we brought him in for questioning. Afghan intelligence had came up, to the mountain, escorted him down, and we later on found out that actually that man was the uncle of a local Taliban leader. And they were under the impression that he was still up on top of the mountain. So, and all of this is going through ICOM radio, which is it's radios that were able to intercept Taliban messages because they're not encrypted. So our interpreters would have these radios, and we'd be able to hear messages back and forth, and they would let us know what they're saying. It's not always accurate, it's not always crystal clear, but it's better than nothing. So throughout the entire day, we kept getting intelligence about how they're gathering soldiers and fighters from all these surrounding villages, and they are going to come up and get this man and attack us. This entire time, we're reporting this down to our, FOB right. And John's in the operations center as well. So he's down there, he's listening. We've got our platoon leader, we got our squad leaders, and everyone else is down there, and they're all listening to figure out what's going on. No one really knows what's going to happen. On the mountain, I'm up there just letting my guys know we got to dig in. We're getting everything ready. This is potentially what could happen, and the interpreter and the platoon leader for the Afghan security was extremely scared. I've never seen them so scared and so amped up. So I knew this was serious. The hours passed by, and it started to get into the night, and we just kept getting more and more numbers and more intel where they're at. They're still on the way. They've got 60 fighters, 70 fighters, 80 fighters, and then it just kind of kept going around. In between 80 to 90 fighters is what they had, and we're up there with 10 guys. We got 10 guys, and we got half a platoon of Afghan soldiers that have little to no training, really bad weapons, really bad aim, not a lot of ammo. So it's not really looking all that good. As we're reporting down, we're just getting it from the FOB down there. They're just telling us, hey, just let us know what happens. Just stick with it. We're just trying to get, up there. We're just not knowing what's going to happen. So we were on standby, Everyone's manning their cruiser positions. Everyone's in their positions and everything else like that. And I was doing what I was doing, which is kind of command and control. So I'm on the radio. I'm at the front of it, just trying to figure out what's going to happen here. It really kicked off about 10:30, 11 o'clock at night when we started seeing a lot of movement. And then what had happened was they initiated the attack from the very front of our outpost with heavy RPG and heavy weapons fire almost instantly. And it just exploded from there. Our Afghan counterparts had went black on ammo, which means they had used every single bit of their ammo in the first 30 minutes of the fight. They were not conservative with their ammo whatsoever. They weren't really hitting targets or anything else like that. So to rely on them was nearly impossible. And then as the attack progressed, we can hear movement all over the place. They were trying to flank different positions. They were going around and trying to get up on the weak side where the Afghan security group was. All the while I'm talking down, I'm communicating with the FOB of what's going on, where we're at. Here we are. We don't have any casualties. This is what our ammo status is. And we're calling for fire. I'm calling for artillery fire from 2 FOBs away as they're giving us 155s. I think it was 155s and 105s, John. I can't remember. And anyway, we held off. And we were able to repel about 3 or 4 attacks over a span of about 3 hours with extremely limited ammo, and our ammo was dwindling. And what I kept hearing was that we were not getting backup. We were not getting what's called QRF, Quick Reaction Force. The commander at the time was not authorizing that. And that's what scared us the most. That's what scared me the most, is because my guys are asking, where's our backup? And I couldn't tell them that backup's not coming. I have no clue what's going on. And I'm talking with, our lieutenant as well. His name's Dan. I'm trying to talk with John. John's listening. I found this out later. They're listening in the platoon room, listen to the whole fight. A lot of people on the FOB could see the fight because you just go outside. It's nighttime and you can see the very top of the mountain. You can just kind of see bullets and everything else like that and explosions going back and forth. So everyone can see what's going on. Everyone can hear what's going on. But command was not authorizing anything to be done. At the time, there was also a very, very, very heavy conflict north. So a lot of air support was already directed at this very big fight that was going up north. And not a lot of people knew what was going on at our little location.
Not to interrupt, Brian, but how far were you from that fight in the north?
I want to say that was maybe like 30 clicks north. But it was heavy. I mean, they had like 2 divisions up there that was just into a thick of it. They were into this very big operation. So, our base, our FOB, was the furthermost point in Afghanistan for it's called a FARP. So it was a refueling point for rotary winged aircraft. Okay. And it was also the northernmost point for we had a FST, so it was a forward surgical team. So it was like a mini hospital there. Okay. So there's 2 key locations of why our FOB was pretty important. At one point in time, I heard that we were not getting reinforcements. And that just really kind of crushed us. Mm. It really crushed me because I had 2 of my guys, one of my team leaders was next to me, Camillo, and he heard that on the radio, and I was trying to keep the radio down so I wasn't going to demoralize everybody. He said, "What did they just say?" They said, "It's not authorized. We're not authorized. You guys have to stick it out." Well, we were extremely low on ammunition. And at this time, the only thing that was keeping these guys back was the amount of artillery fire and explosions I was able to call from 2 FOBs away. And they went black on ammo. They didn't have any more to sustain us. The next thing that we could do was our base is the Afghans had their mortar crew as well, which they're not nearly as accurate. So that was scary to use them, but they didn't have nearly as enough equipment, and they were black on ammo too. And black on ammo means you're done, you're out. So the only thing to keep them at bay was just this wall of steel and wall of explosions. And when that stopped and we were low on ammo, we just had no clue what we were going to do. And I'll admit I was extremely, extremely scared. I kind of was just sitting there kind of making my peace, because that location, when the Russians were there, they had an entire platoon of Russian soldiers up there, and that exact location was actually overran years, decades before. So that was a previous location where the Russians had been, and people they were killed to a man there. So that was really kind of depressing.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's not a good thought, not at all.
No. So I'm just sitting there not knowing what's going to happen or what we're going to do. Meanwhile, as soon as this kicked off, John was getting everybody ready. And just standing by, was just waiting for the go to get something going on. All right. And he'll tell you his part here later, but what had happened was out of nowhere later, John said, hey, or someone said, I can't even remember if it was John, but they said QRF is on the way. QRF, they just lifted up. Birds are landing in 2 minutes. And that just came out of nowhere. And I had no clue what we were going to do. Like I said, this was our first rotation up on the mountain. So a lot of these guys who were landing had not been up on that location yet. It's pitch black in the middle of a firefight in unknown terrain. And we have 3 rows of razor wire. That's like a maze out there where at the only spot where you could land. So somebody had to go out there and mark the landing zone, mark the LZ with the strobe, with the IR strobe. Well, that somebody was obviously the highest ranking person, which was freaking me.
I feel like he was going to say that.
So you got volunteered for that job, huh?
Yeah, and I remember sitting there, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I know what I have to do. And I didn't hesitate, but I did have to take a breath. I'm like, all right, this is just what needs to be done. So I went ahead and I gave my next commands as briefly as I could. I said, okay, you're on the radio. You're in charge. This is what we're doing. Guys, strap in. I said, you guys need to go ahead and cover me. I said, conserve your ammunition, but cover me so I can get out there so I can mark this LZ. And I think Camillo, I think he was the one, he said, because with your all's accent, he's like, Sergeant. He's like, let me go. I said, no. They make fun of me to this day because I said, no, this is my OP. I got to do this. But they were like, oh, there's Sergeant Wood. Wind's blowing in his hair. He's got American flag as a cape. He said, no, this is my OP. I got to do it.
Has an eagle like on his shoulder?
Yeah, the eagle was calling and lightning was flashing. So I handed everything off. I made my piece, clapped some shoulders real quick, and then I took off by myself. And that was that was so quiet in that moment. I could hear everything else. I went out, it was pitch black, had my NVGs on. I could see Taliban movement. I could hear them talking when I was out there on this field by myself. And I've never felt so alone or by myself in my entire life. And that 2 minutes was the longest 2 minutes of my life because it wasn't 2 minutes that time. It had to have been 45 seconds when I got everything ready and good to go. And I'm about 50 meters away from the OP, about 75 actually. And I just felt like a million miles away. And I was just sitting there and I was on my knees, crouched down with my rifle, and I'm sitting there looking around, and I had the strobe, and the strobe was on, and I could see my guys covering me from behind me, things like that. And they were shooting, this way. And they obviously saw me, and I'm sitting there wondering, I'm like, where are the helicopters? Where are these birds at? They said 2 minutes. And out of nowhere, I just heard just this thump, 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 just coming right over, like behind me, just out of nowhere. And I looked up, and I could see John in the doorway. And there's the door gunner, and the door gunner was over there, and he was able to cover, the landing zone. But John is over this dude's shoulder, like looking down, like about ready to jump off this helo that's like 50 feet up in the air as it circles around. It looks like an action movie. And I'm looking up at John, and I'm like, oh, there's John. I'm like, oh my gosh, he's awesome. I take the strobe, I throw it as hard as I can. The first bird lands and they hop off, and then the second bird comes, and I don't have a strobe anymore. So they don't know where I'm at. And I swear I almost got crushed by this helo as the second one came down. I'm like, I'm going to come out here and do all this. And this is how I'm going to die. I'm going to die with boxers on because that's all I had. I had boxers and a plate carrying a helmet. Oh, of course this dude died. Well, look at what he's wearing. And so the second one, they throw all the ammo out. They throw these, they call them speed balls. Where they throw a bunch of ammo, water, MREs, and these body bags, toss them out. All these guys are grabbing this stuff and going, and we're just we're rocking and rolling back up to the OP. Now we got these two squads of guys. All my guys are motivated. We got water, we got food, we got more ammo. We can stick in the fight. And then John got back up there, and it was amazing because John came up there, and there's our other squad leaders, some of my best friends. They all came up here, and every single one of them was a volunteer to come get us out of this. And John comes up, and he does not take over command. He still gives me command of the OP. He was just there as a fighter. That's all he wanted to do. He just wanted to be there for us. He just wanted to be there with me, and he just wanted to be there and be an extra gun. And that's just that's amazing, And that was just awesome just to have him, there with our friends, with our best friends. And it was just, it was great. And then it wasn't but maybe an hour later, we were starting to get really heavy air cover, and we just rained hell on that mountain. It was just insane. I mean, we had rotary winged aircraft, we had fixed wing aircraft, we just rocked that whole valley for about 2.5 hours straight with a lot of taxpayer money. A lot of taxpayer money. And I felt great. Not a single man from our element was injured. Not a single man.
That's amazing.
That is absolutely amazing, and what an intense story. I mean, I can't even imagine, like you said, how alone you must have felt sitting in a field. Like it must have been surreal. I'm in my head now. I'm trying to imagine it, and I can't even get close to it. So. Thank you both, by the way, for all you do for our nation. And I will say that, there was a time when people thought of the National Guard and they just thought, they're just weekend warriors. I don't know if, of course, you both remember the movie First Blood when Rambo's up in the woods and the National Guard comes to get him. And something tells me that if you two were leading the National Guard team that went after Rambo, that little town may not have had such devastation. However, Johnny, let's get into your side of the story for a little bit. I want to hear your version.
All right, so I'll just pick up from as Brian he already laid out the landscape, how they had captured a guy earlier in the day, and then I'm down at Fob Wright, and just a little bit more of the landscape. So at the peak of the mountain where Opina side of the mountain, you're overlooking the valley down, overwatching Fob Wright, right? And Brian already elaborated the importance on Fob Wright being a refuel point for aviation.
And just by the way, for everyone, while John's frozen real quick, FOB stands for Forward Operating Base.
And,
hold on, Johnny. You there?
Yep.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
And so Fob Wright was the furthest forward refuel point for rotary wing, which are helicopters, and then as well as the forward surgical support team. So they had surgeons on site for all the casualties that would happen in any of the combat action in northeastern Afghanistan. Then on the opposite side of the mountaintop, down into the other valley, into Ganjgal. Ganjgal is very well known for the Taliban activity because that's where several medals of honor have been awarded previously to our deployment there. There was Fob Wright. Fob Wright was down there, and the Taliban would constantly harass Fob Joyce. Fob Joyce with indirect fires from mortars and rockets. And from OP Nevada's position, we had a really good position to pinpoint the enemy's locations.
So, John, are you fairly close to the Pakistan border there?
Say that again?
Were you fairly close to the Pakistan border?
Yes, we were. Yes.
So, Johnny, when you're down at the base and you get word that, your guys are in a fight and, you can see it, what's going through your head when you first get that information?
So, getting the intel reports, as Brian was saying, how they captured him, and then Afghan intelligence elements came up and retrieved him down off of the mountaintop earlier during the day, and the Taliban thought they were still up there. And we were getting all the intel reports from radio intercepts that who the guy was related to the local Taliban leader. And the Taliban leader was swearing to that all his men would fight to the death to get his uncle back off of the top of that mountain. So they didn't know, the local Taliban didn't know that he wasn't on the mountain anymore. And so any of the communications we had between Brian and myself on a different frequency than the fob was on, more private conversation. It consisted more of, hey, get ready, something's going to happen. We would confirm the intel from what his interpreter was getting up, as well as what we were getting down at the base. It got kind of tense, but then again, a lot of times the Taliban make idle threats. They'll say they're going to do something, and sometimes nothing ever happens. So it's like, we got to wait and see how this situation develops, right? You guys still there?
Yeah, we're here. Go ahead, Johnny.
You.
Okay, sorry.
It's all right.
And then as the day went on and the sun started going down, started getting dark, it was just like, hey guys, me and Brian talking back and forth, and again on the private frequency, off in the platoon room, because the relationship with the commander and wanting to have his fingers in everything caused more confusion on that mission than it was as a contributing factor to success. So we would talk more personal on a different frequency, and we just war game out different things and listen to his ideas. And he was picked for that position, right? I saw Brian in the worst of times on an earlier deployment. And I knew he was the guy. He was going to be able to handle this. So all I got to do is just provide the support he needs from my position as the platoon sergeant. So nighttime came, and as we're watching across the valley, you're looking across, and like Brian said, it's like 1 mile as the crow flies, but it's probably about, on a map, looking down a map, probably like 5 to 6 kilometers away, but it's on peaks going steep up like this. So you can't get up to it in a vehicle. The only way we can transport personnel back and forth is through rotary wing capabilities, through use of helicopters. And so looking across the valley, and the very first radio report comes down that, hey, we're receiving contact. Now everyone's, radar's up. People are coming outside, all the soldiers in the platoon, everyone's standing outside and watching the firefight from across the valley. And you can see the rounds going back and forth, and you can see the explosions where the location of OP Nevada is from the RPG detonating, as well as they were taking mortars as well. So that was going on, and all we could do from where we're at down at the FOB, it's just watch in anticipation that, hey, we made sure those guys were trained right. They're going to fight, give it all they got. When they need help, we have to be ready to go help them. So this isn't a spectator show. It's not time for us to sit here and watch the fireworks like we're down watching the 4th of July, right?
Yep.
Those are our guys. Several of those guys lived in my house before they all deployed. The tightness and the relationship within that platoon was amazing. And to see the willingness of those that couldn't be involved, like trying to gnaw off their arm just so they could get involved in the support and the help to send those guys up there to make sure they make it through the night.
That must have been frustrating, and I'm sure I can understand why Ryan said you looked like you wanted to jump out of that helicopter.
It's hard to watch because a lot of these guys, there was a lot of soldiers that had previous combat experience. That combat experience that they had previously was because they served with me before. So there was a lot of personal relationships involved in trying to be a competent and tactical leader and not get caught up in emotions is a very difficult thing because we were tight.
Yeah, I mean, living with a group of guys in a house prior to deploy, you must have had, just at that age too, you must have had fun hijinks that really brought you together that way. And then, of course, the bond from going to war and going overseas is through the roof. So that must have been just unbelievable.
That was one of my hardest obstacles, was to detach my emotions from it, because I've at that point I had already lost several friends and soldiers during the deployments, and I wanted to do whatever I could.
Yeah, no, and Johnny, thank you for talking about this stuff, by the way. I can tell just talking to you and Brian that even when you talk about this in a fun way, it causes a little bit of tension in you. I can see you, I can see you tightening up a little bit, and I don't want that, for God's sakes. But did we lose Brian, Noah? Brian, he with us still?
Yeah, he dropped.
So Brian dropped off. So I think what we're going to do, Johnny, is we're going to have a part 2 to this show where we continue with a bunch of the guys that were at the base that day. So I don't know. Do you want to cut it off here and then do a part 2?
Man, that'd be amazing.
Yeah, let's do that. So that way we can get back hold of Brian.
So I have to ask too, was Rashad part of this?
Yeah, was Rashid part of this, or was he in the other one?
No, he was in the
Humvee.
Okay.
When we're dealing with you and your military buddies, John, we got several these battles that we have to go through. It's amazing what you guys have gone through in your time. But Brian hopped off. He had something to do. But for those of you who are watching, Brian today has an incredible business. It's called Good Shepherd Defense. GOODSHEPHERDDEFENSE.com. He does weapons training, self-defense, arms training, a bunch of cool stuff. Check out his website. But we are going to come back next week with part 2. We may even do a part 3 with Op Nevada. Who knows? And we're going to have some of the other guys, I think, John, that we might be able to get that with that day.
They're really excited, a chance to talk about it and chance to see each other's ugly faces.
It's a very interesting story. I can't wait to hear more.
And let me tell you, Joy and I are very honored to have you guys coming on our show to talk to us. Again, we know for those watching, the guys don't really love talking about all their battles and stuff. Almost everyone I've ever met is incredibly humble, and we appreciate you taking some time to tell us these stories and just let everyone out there know some of the things that you folks have gone through. And one of the reasons why you should appreciate veterans so much is the heartaches and the things they've done in the name of freedom for us. And remember, whether you agree or disagree with why they're there, they just go anyway. So, that's why we give them respect. So we thank you all.
And we thank you, John,
Yes.
and Brian, who dropped off, for wanting to give back as much as you do.
Absolutely. It's unbelievable. And by the way, Brian, obviously is your friend. Like, as soon as I saw him pop on the Zoom, I'm like, if this ain't one of Melson's buddies, I don't know what is. So he looks just like you, for God's sakes. But anyway, Brian, we'll talk to you next week. If you're watching this one, we want to thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing your story. John, thank you for sharing your story. Everybody, please like, subscribe, follow. We're on YouTube, Facebook, all of the social media, Rumble, Podbean, all the Spotify, all that good stuff. We're working on making it easier to do all that, but unfortunately, none of us, we can talk, but we're not the best with the technology. But Johnny, you want to take us out with the ever popular slogan we leave with?
Yeah, I do just want to add something more to the show really quick.
Absolutely.
A lot of times guys see these Hollywood movies, these big things that come out about different battles and stuff that took place. And it's mostly, special operations, and not to take away from any of those guys. They played an enormous role in success in the 20-something years of war we found ourselves in. But as we base the show off of guts and grit, right? And we're talking today about those soldiers that I've had the honor and privilege to serve with. They were from the National Guard, right? And so when we say guts and grit, these are guys that were taxi drivers, carpenters, plumbers. They were everyday people, Mark, that gave that up to go and get trained with me for a few months and then go serve on the battlefield in Afghanistan and have that guts and grit to go ahead and push through battles like OP Nevada, right? And man, that's the everyday person. That's an American right there.
That's the American spirit right there, if I've ever heard it. Now you get me all riled up,
I know.
John.
Right? And so I'm saying that because I think that's something we can all relate to, right? And so when you see that kid dropping off your pizza, you never know that he could have been with me.
Yeah.
On Oak, Nevada, and you didn't think so just because he's not a special forces guy. You wouldn't think. But there's people, your neighbors, there's people all throughout the communities. You just don't know what they're capable of.
And if they have a guy like you training them, I think they're capable of pretty much anything, Johnny.
I try and do my best.
We are all, trust me when I tell you, we're all very happy with your best, and we all sleep better at night knowing you're on the front lines.
Thank you for bringing that up, though.
All right, now what is the line we like to go out with? Which actually today's show is very important to follow our advice here, because I believe all the gentlemen that were at OP Nevada followed this advice from you.
And you took the words right out of my mouth, Mark. Maybe not verbatim, but that's the line I was going with. You know, the whole thing with why I train and do what I do is to train to be hard to kill. And all those guys, they understand that method of madness. They adopted it. It absorbed into them and it became part of them. And I truly believe to my core, that's what one of the contributing things for them to be so successful in Afghanistan, and as well as getting through the trials and tribulations post-deployment, getting through life and picking themselves up from some dark places after what they went through.
Yeah, we're going to have a show discussing that at some point, too.
So
because
make sure you tip your pizza guy, because it might be hard to kill.
Yes, make sure you tip the pizza guy good, because he might be hard to kill. Hey, everybody, thank you for tuning in to episode 9 of Guts and Grit. Don't worry, we're going to come back with more on OP Nevada and some of the soldiers that were there. Johnny, thank you as always. Joy, thank you. And Noah, the engineer, thank you. We'll see you all next week, everybody. Bye-bye.
I'll see you. Glad you're okay, Joy.
Thank you. Thank you, John.
Guts and Grit. Like, subscribe, comment, share.